Hello and welcome back to Economics with Professor Klein at Cuesta College. So the topic for today's video is solving for equilibrium. So I'm going to start actually with an equation, and then we can also see it by putting this into a table. So when we talk about solving for equilibrium, always make sure we remember that it's going to be both equilibrium quantity and equilibrium price. Oftentimes we solve for one and then forget about the other. Right? So equilibrium exists where quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied, right? And so I have these two equations up here. So I have quantity supplied is equal to 40/3 times the price minus 10. And even if this didn't say quantity supplied, one of the ways that I would know that this is the supply equation is because quantity and price are directly related. Quantity is positive, price is positive, right? So I'll go ahead and put that back here. And then I have quantity demanded is equal to -20/3 times price plus 80, okay? And so again, same thing, even if this didn't say quantity demanded, one of the ways that we know that this is a demand equation is because if quantity is positive, price is negative. There's an inverse relationship here between the quantity and the price. And so therefore we know that this is demand, right? And so as we plug in different prices, and we can solve it that way, but as we plug in different prices, we'll find that when we plug in a price here, we're going to get a different quantity supplied. That's going to go as price goes up, quantity supplied goes up. As we plug in the same price here, we're going to see the quantity demanded falls, right? And vice versa. So there are multiple ways to solve for equilibrium. We're going to start with the most direct, right? So we will show you, or I will show you what this looks like in a table in just a moment. So the first way is recall that it's where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. So what we're going to do is simply rewrite this equation using this information, right? So quantity demanded is -20/3 P plus 80. So that's the same thing as quantity demanded, right? And then that's equal to our quantity supplied equation. So 40/3 P minus 10. And so notice by putting these equal, right? Now we only have one variable. So it's going to be where these quantities are equal. And by the way, when we plug it back in, that's when we'll find our equilibrium quantity because they will be equal as well. And so now we can simply solve for price, and that will tell us equilibrium price. So a little bit of math. If I add 20/3 P right over here and add 20/3 P over here, I'm going to add the 10 on both sides as well, right? So this will cancel. I don't know how you were taught algebra. This is one of the ways that I recall. So I have 90 over here. 40 plus 20 is 60/3. I can simplify that, right? What is 60/3? Well, 60 divided by 3 is 20. So I'm just going to rewrite that. So I have 90 is equal to 20 times the price. So all I've done is collect my like terms. So now what's left? Divide both sides by 20, right? And so equilibrium price is equal to 9/2, simplify that, $4.50, right? Equilibrium price is $4.50. We're not finished. Why are we not finished? Because again, it's both equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Okay, so which one should we plug this one into? The answer is it doesn't matter because again, it's going to be equal and we can actually prove that. So, and in fact, that's the condition for equilibrium. So I can put here quantity demanded -20/3. If I wanted to, I could go back to 9/2, right? That might be easier, plus 80. I'm going to simplify my fraction, 1, 3, 1, 10, right? And so I have quantity demanded of -10 times 3 is -30, right? Plus 80. So quantity demanded is 50. That should be our equilibrium quantity. Let's go ahead and plug it in. 40 thirds times 9/2, which is the same as 9/2, right? That's 3, that's 1, that's 1, that's 2, right? 20. So 20 times 3 is 60, minus 10 is 50, right? So the equilibrium price is 450. The equilibrium quantity is 50. And there is our equilibrium point, right? And so we can graph this. And in fact, this information here, not only can we graph it, but it's going to tell us why 450 is our equilibrium point, right? So when we graph, we always do price on the vertical and quantity on the horizontal. And what was in front of the P, right, is actually the inverse of the slope. And that's because normally we would write it y equals mx plus b. So it would normally be written price in terms of quantity, but we had it quantity in terms of price. So I'm just going to keep it rather simple. I'm not going to worry about the slopes right now. What I know is that I have an upward sloping supply curve, right, and a downward sloping demand curve. And what I've exhibited here, right, this is 450 and this is 50, right? So this is how we find equilibrium, both via equation and via graph. Come back in just a moment and I'll have it on a table for you. So here we are back, right? And so we've gotten this information from still these equations. And so you'll see that often in homework and in exams, we will also see this demand schedule and the supply schedule. So notice I have them side by side. The difference between a demand and supply schedule is just the demand schedule is telling me at a particular price, here's the quantity demanded. Supply schedule is at a particular price, here's the quantity supplied, right? And so again, this is still following the equations that we had up earlier, and here they are. And so just as we solved for it first, right? The other way that we can see it on a table is finding, again, where quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. And so just as we saw a moment ago, right, at 450, the quantity demanded is 50 and the quantity supplied is 50. And so that is our equilibrium point, right? And so we're just restating that. But here's another way that we see this information given. And so what happens is that as the price goes higher, right? If the price were $6 in this market, then the producers want to produce 70, but the consumers at $6 only want to buy 40. So what do we have? At the price of $6, we have a surplus, right? And we have a surplus not of 20, we have a surplus of 30, right? Because here's what we know. It's not just that we would have 70 items and people would buy 50. No, we'd have 70 items and people would come buy 40. So there'd be 30 left in the store. At a price of $7.50, we're going to have a surplus of 60 items, right? And so the higher the price goes, the more, remember, law of supply, the more quantity we want to provide to the market, but the less quantity people want to buy. And so what we have happen is that there is downward pressure on the price. If you think about it at a store, if there's lots of additional items left, how are you going to get people to buy them? You drop the price. So surplus puts downward pressure, right? Downward pressure on the price. What about the opposite? Well, if it's $1.50, we'll just ignore a price of free because when is anything free? So if the price is $1.50, people want 70 items, but suppliers say it's not really worth my time. I'm only going to produce 10 items. What do we have? We have a shortage right? We have a shortage where the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity that's on the shelves. So there's a shortage here of 60. And so notice you have to pay attention to, right? You could do quantity supplied minus quantity demanded, and then that would be negative. That's a shortage of 60. Or just thinking about which one is larger, right? If they're not equal, then we're either going to have a shortage or a surplus. And again, same thing here at $3 is what we saw at 150. At $3, the producers are willing to produce 30, but the consumers want 60 at $3. So what do we have? We have a shortage of 30. And so what's going on here? Well, if you imagine that you have a store, right, and you filled up the shelves with 30 of these items and they're gone by the end of the day, right, and there's still items left elsewhere, then that's telling you maybe you price things a little too low. And so this is putting upwards pressure on the price. And so this is essentially how we find equilibrium, is through observation in the market, essentially of quantity. The problem is we don't really observe quantity when we go to the store, because again, it's about market demand and market supply. We don't observe market demand when we go to the store. When we go to the store, we just see, I'm buying one, right? Or it's almost out and I'm grabbing the last one. We didn't know how many there were to begin with. The only people who know that were the suppliers. What do we notice? We notice the price. And so that's why I think we often think about price much more than we think about quantity. But price is really the pressure of having enough. If there's too much, then it tells me I have to lower the price. If there's not enough, that tells me I need to raise the price in order to get more produced and people to buy less and slow down. So that's essentially what we are doing in economics, is trying to find, sometimes called the bliss point, of where there is just enough. Now, how often do we reach that? Maybe almost never. If you study statistics, then we just want to be within a couple of standard deviations, right? We never have to get it exactly perfect. So I hope this helped not only solve, but really think about the real world implications. How do we experience economics at the store? All right, hope you all have a great day.